How you doing? This is for my 944 Turbo S, 1988. I've owned it for years. Uh, Basically, it was puking oil out the back for the rear main seal because I let it sit for a year. You know, it is what it is. You know, I got too many cars. So what I wanted to do is I looked around, I pulled it all out. I was just going to do the main seal, pull it all out, and this clutch disc is really close to the rivets. Plus, it fell on the ground and kind of broke it. And it came out in two pieces because it's supposed to be a plate right here that's, you know, or that's basically sits in between the disc and the throwout bearing. Don't even know why they have it, but, you know, it is what it is. And that came out in a couple of pieces, but I pulled that all out and to replace the bearing, and the pilot bearing was shot, and the throwout bearing on this one was, like, you know, noisy and nasty. So what I did was I looked around for clutch kits for the car. I mean, when you first start out, like on Pelican or on anything, it's the prices are just astronomical. A clutch disc was like $1,000, and just like, or pretty close. I'm like, wait a minute, this is, you know, I knew they were expensive, but I didn't think they were going to be that expensive. So I looked around, and then I started reading all the forums, and everybody's saying use a 930 disc because it's bigger, blah blah blah, and, you know, it will fit. And somebody said, will it fit? All right. Well, I took the chance. I went to FCP Europe. They had the best price on clutches, hands down, for the 944 by a couple $100 easily. And I mean, I live on the East Coast, up in New Hampshire, and they, you know, when you just order the free shipping, it comes in 2 days. It's fantastic. And their warranty, I mean, I won't use a lot of their warranty stuff on wear items because I just don't feel right about it. You know, I know people who actually, you know, send their oil and filter back and get new oil. And I personally, I can't do that. You know, I just can't. But let's go over a little differences from the 930 disc to the 951 disc right here. And if you take a look, this 951 disc has a width, and the biggest thing is they were saying that the width was, you know, because you could use the entire surface plate or entire friction plate of the or surface of the throwout, not the throwout, the pressure plate. So if you take a look, this thing is 37 millimeters of width right here, and this one, if you take pretty much the same measurement, you have 42 millimeters of width. That's significant, you know, especially in surface area, you know, is it pi r squared or something? But if you take a look at it, you have 6 springs, you have 4 springs. Whether or not I know that's going to make a difference, no idea. But what I have here, if you take a look on this one, there's unused surface area on this disc, and there's unused surface. There's a ridge here, and there's a ridge here. So what I wanted to do was like, okay, well, how much, you know, surface area is it? And if you take a look, and I didn't even change this width from that, it covers the entire surface area. It's like, wow, I get to use every single bit of this pressure plate, you know, for a clutch, and I had the, you know, flywheel refinished. So I was, you know, pretty enthused about it. And I put together the clutch kit myself. You know, it was like low 600s for the 951 for this pressure plate and this disc and throwout bearing, and as a kit in the FCP kit. But this added about $100 total to it, I think it was. You know, I can't remember exactly what the cost. I think the total cost, plus I got a 5% discount off. And actually, Honey actually did it, you know. Got a 5% discount, and it came out to like $730, $740, I believe. I can't remember exactly what it was. You know, it was when you go past $500, okay, you know. But I am really happy with this. Hopefully, I'm not going to have any problems with it disengaging, because the thickness looks, I can't tell because I have no idea what the original thickness was in 951. And this, I think it should be fine. No, you know, the people that said it worked, and I'm going on that. And I just happen to have that in the toolbox, so I didn't have to buy it. Let's go over to the car. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I did, or what couple things you're going to have to do, because it's miserable to do a clutch. I'll tell you right now, it's miserable. And I have another video coming out on doing the cats on an X-Type Jag. Horrid, just horrid. you know. But let's go over there. We're going to film that, and we'll see exactly what couple of steps that I can see. I mean, I can't tell you how to do it faster. That's not going to be it. There might be, I mean, you might, I'm actually going to show you, you got to bite the bullet and just do it. And there's a couple of things that you should just take off. Just take off, and it'll make your life easier, you know. So let's run over there, and I'm going to show you, I'll get the thing up on the lift, and I'll show you what exactly I did. I'm going to run over a couple of problems that I had basically trying to get this car, trying to get the torque tube and everything out. As you can see, this is the reason why I pulled it, because of the rear main seal. It's, you know, this is all pretty much clean right down here because the oil is just pouring out is what it was. It's all dirty around here. It's relatively clean here because of the river of oil. Now, the first, one of the major problems, I mean, everything was a problem, but one of the things I had a problem with is the pilot bearing. The pilot bearing was in here, so I used the old hot rodder trick, which I've used before, and it works, is you fill it full of grease. You have I turned down a rod that fits exactly in here, and I pushed it out. Well, what happened is, this is the seal, or the dirt seal that's on the other side of this. Now, this is the internal part. As you can see, the grease crushed it and forced its way through, popped this seal out, and lubricated the bearing. It's like, all right. So what I did do to get it out is I made this tool. I took a cap head screw, I ground it down with a grinder, I welded onto a nut that goes onto a small dent puller. It got right inside. As you can see, it goes right in. The head goes right here. That way, you just slightly tap it, and go around, and it just brings it right out. That was the first thing. Now, let's go look at the second thing, and the reason why I actually pulled the torque tube out. This is the reason why I pull a torque tube out. There's cracks up through here, right there. I'm starting to dig these out. There's cracks right here, as you can see. And I'm starting to dig this one out to hollow it out to get the TIG welder in. Also, let me look what I found. So check this, check the torque tube for cracks when you pull it out. So I'm going to show you the transmission has a crack in it also. Here's the transmission. You can see there's a crack right up here. And I got to dig that out and TIG weld that. So that's the reason why I actually pulled the torque tube fully out. Let me go to the back of the car, and I'm going to show you what I did in order, I mean, if you're going to be pulling it out, I'll show you what steps to take just to avoid, but there's no get around in disassembling everything. Here we are at the back of the car. As you can see, I pulled the fuel tank out. I mean, with the 944 turbo, you're going to have to pull the fuel pump, which means draining the fuel tank. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just what's going to have to happen. Now, if you're going to be pulling the torque tube out of the car, the fuel tank actually got in the way of me pulling the torque tube back enough to get the clutch assembly out. But I could have left it in there, you know, left the torque tube in there to get the entire clutch system out, no problem, because the torque tube came back, hit the fuel tank, and is like probably 4 inches of travel to try and get it further back in order for it to get the clutch assembly off, or the actual drive shaft or torque tube out of the clutch assembly. But seeing how I pulled it, I mean, you have to pull the transmission too. So it's pretty much, you might as well just do this. Pull the transmission. See, there's a bolt right here. Let me show you the bolt over here. This is the bolt you're going to have to pull out. As there's another one identical on the other side. What it is when you pull this bolt out, this thing will, after you go over here, you have to release all of the ABS line, all ABS wiring, and you have to remove the brake lines so they don't hang up. I probably didn't have to do it on the other side because I thought I was going to have to drop it all down. I didn't. All I had to do is pull this bolt. I had to drop it and let it kitty corner down, and that way I could pull the torque tube out. There's also a bracing right across here. You can see the holes. There's a bracing right across here you're going to have to take out also. Did I have to pull the fuel tank? Well, no. Have to pull the fuel pump? Yes, because you have to pull that out because I have an oil cooler on the diff because the diff is a limited slip. There you go. So there's not much about it. Everything else is pretty much straightforward. The only other thing that was really horrible was up here up front. The major problem that I had also, you know, to get the actual clutch housing off was this. These are the RPM and RPM sensors and top dead center reference sensors for the fuel injection system. Take a look on the one closest to the engine. You'll see two colors of aluminum. On this, the Turbo S, I have no idea if it's stock or not, but there's a sleeve which basically supports that top dead center reference sensor. It allows it not to move. Suspect that they might have had problems in their race series with the sensors moving around and not really getting a correct signal because they push the horsepower up on these. Do not know. But in order for me, after you have to pull the entire sensors to get the gearbox because you just can't get that sleeve out. It's such a tight fit. After you get that out, you have to set the distance for the one from the furthest back closest to the firewall. That is the one that you're going to set the distance. If you take a look down there, there's a third sensor down. That third sensor, I believe, is an additional reference mark sensor. I forgot to look exactly what the name of it is. But if this thing is not adjusted, that thing hits the flywheel. Want to know how I found out? Because I pull it through by hand every single time, and that was the culprit. This is what I made in order to set that top or the RPM sensor, because you have a 0.8 millimeter distance is where you want on the flywheel. I'll show you. This is what happens to gauges when they sit into a car for 30 years. This was a spare that I tried to pull out of this housing. This is a standard 944 reference sensor mark housing. Everything just crumbled is what it is. And this is one of the original sensors right here. As you can see, there's rust all inside there. It just crumbled. But get back to the point where what we're trying to do is we're trying to measure out the reference. So what we got to do is we have the sensor inside here. There is usually, well, not usually, there is a washer that goes like this, and it sets it up about this high is what it does. The washer that's inside here is also just a spacer. And that's pretty much what I believe what Porsche did, just for the, just to make things more annoying. What do I have to do? Well, with this and the spacer together, this is the distance that it takes, was what they say they want from the flywheel teeth, which is 0.8 millimeters. And this is what I had in order to get down there, because you can't get a gauge down inside there to measure the actual distance. And you want, with the teeth that are running like this, you want to sit on top of the teeth is what you want to do. You don't want to sit it inside the teeth, because a small thin depth gauge will probably sit inside the teeth and give you a miscellaneous reading. So this is set up so you have it like this. I did this on a surface plate, not on this, to get a much more accurate reading. But what this is, here is the distance from the flywheel, the sensor, plus the spacer involved. With the spacer attached to this, you put this so it hits the teeth right there, and you have to make sure this is flat bottomed on the surface plate, and this is flat bottomed on this, so it doesn't rock up and down, because you don't want it at an angle like this, which will give you a different reading. You just want this flat on there, and there you go. That's the surface, and that'll give you the correct height off of the RPM ring gear. So there's that portion. That's how I did it, and I went up and down. I also had to have a really small 1/4 inch, because I use a 6 millimeter cap head bolt. There was one in here, and there was a standard 13 millimeter thread one in there, which I think somebody else put in. So I used two 6 millimeter cap heads, which were 8 by 125, and I had to have a very small, let me show you. Here's this. This is what I used in order to get the bolts, because I could not get anything there. Nothing there. Because I used a 1/4 inch ratchet, because that was the only ratchet that would fit down inside there. And it was so tight. It was because you want to get some type of torque on these things. Not a lot. I believe it's 8 foot-pounds. I'm not really sure. I have to look at the book. But this is what I did in order to ease my life. Is I used 1/4 inch drive socket, 6 millimeters, I cut up this 6mm hex head, or yeah, hex or Allen key. Cut that, slipped it in here, and that gave me just the right amount of size where I could get there and it wouldn't obstruct with the firewall. That was a pain. But you got it, you got them a little bit on there. You put this down here, and there you go. And the only thing other that I did is, this is a 13mm wrench head. This is a 13mm hex head nut. A big flat washer. I wanted it really thick so I had no deflection. This is from a Japanese car, which is a 12mm wrench that fits on it, so it goes in like this. I used a 13mm nut and went in there, and it wouldn't do it. It would bind up on the sides. So that's a small little safety thing. I'm not a safety thing, but a small little tip that, you know, use this so it actually fits inside and basically sits like this. And what you're doing, let me do this again, like this. See, it is very. I mean, you know, my 13mm head would not go in there, but this will set you the distance of this plus 0.8. I use 0.88, but 0.8 of a millimeter for the distance. There you go. And hey, thank you very much for showing up. I hope this helped out a little bit. You know, there's no getting around this clutch job. This is one of the worst things you can do on a 944. Rear main seal, clutch, the whole thing, it's horrible. Just to let you know. And if you're in there and are doing a clutch, do the rear main seal. It's $5 for a Timken. Don't buy the Chinese EM ones, you know? And that's pretty much it. These things, if this car wasn't so nice to drive, it's completely opposite of, I have a 911 SC, it's completely opposite of the 911 SC. The 911 SC is a sports car. This is more of a GT car. It's comfortable, it's fun, it's fast. You know, I can't say enough good things about it, except the maintenance is horrible when it comes to this. Oil changes, yeah, no biggie. And they don't generally break, but this, and I got the timing belt down pretty good, so I have no problem with that. Water pumps are kind of expensive, but, you know, it is what it is. It's a nice car, you know, and anybody who decides to buy one, you know, hey, more power to you. I think they're friggin' fantastic, you know. Just have a mindset of going into it. It's going to take you a long time to undo all the bolts. That's pretty much it, you know. It's not really difficult. It's just grunt work. So, but hey, thank you very much for showing up to the channel. I appreciate it. You know, this is just little snippets that I'm going to start putting in that I've done because I have to get other stuff done around and get other cars running. So hopefully you like these, along with the builds with the SQ and A2 and A1, whatever you want to call it, and 22B, because that will be coming up really soon because I just got the parts car for it. And that's it. Hey, thanks for showing up. You can do it. I'm nothing special. Have a good one.